Darth Maul wasn't born as the evil Sith Lord we know him as, because it was a life of pain that shaped his dark character. Maul grew up on Dathomir, where the Night Sisters ruled. The young boy lived peacefully among his people, developing his unusually strong connection to the Force. His mother, Talzin, leader of the Night Sisters, loved him deeply and saw great potential in her son's abilities. But his story took a devastating turn when he caught the attention of Darth Sidious. Sidious had been searching the galaxy for Force-sensitive children to turn into Sith weapons. When he discovered Maul on Dathomir, he knew he had found exactly what he needed. Sidious approached Mother Talzin with false promises, claiming she would become his right hand, his most trusted ally in his new galactic order. Talzin believed him because she wanted power for her people. However, this trust would cost her everything. In reality, Sidious had come for one thing: her son. He kidnapped Maul and took him far from Dathomir, leaving his mother heartbroken and furious. Sidious spent years breaking down Maul's mind and rebuilding it with pure hatred. He shattered the boy's mind, drowning any remaining innocence in pain and rage. Through endless brutal training, he turned an innocent child into a killing machine designed for one purpose: destroying the Jedi. Maul's transformation was about to begin, and it would change galactic history forever. That's exactly why I've gone through all the canon sources to bring you his complete story. Apprentice of Sidious. After years of brutal trials, Maul's lightsaber training finally began. Sidious drilled him in combat with Marksman H training remotes, forcing him to fight multiple opponents at once. To sharpen his agility, Maul also battled combat droids and beasts, each encounter designed to break his limits. Every lesson reinforced the Sith doctrine that only through struggle and pain could true power be forged. Ultimately, Maul constructed a double-bladed lightsaber, a weapon unlike any seen in generations. Forged during his training, it became his signature armament, designed to overwhelm multiple opponents at once. The saber staff embodied not only his ferocity, but also the Sith's belief that intimidation and fear were weapons as powerful as the blade itself. But Sidious's training went far beyond combat. He spent years breaking down the boy's mind and body, then rebuilding him with pure hatred. The Sith Lord subjected Maul to constant physical and mental torture, convinced that only through endless pain could his apprentice reach his full potential as a weapon. Every lesson was an ordeal, and failure brought punishment so severe that they pushed Maul to the brink of death. First, Sidious broke him down completely. He subjected Maul to grueling physical trials, often abandoning him in deadly conditions where he had to survive through the dark side alone. These ordeals taught him to embrace anger and fear as sources of strength rather than weaknesses. But this was just the beginning of Sidious's plan to create the perfect weapon. Next, the Sith Lord taught him that Jedi philosophy was built on lies and weakness. Instead, he instilled in him that the dark side offered unlimited power to those brave enough to accept its gifts, while the light side's restrictions led only to defeat and destruction. These lessons became the foundation of Maul's worldview and fueled his growing hatred for everything the Jedi represented. Then, Sidious physically conditioned his apprentice by forcing him to fight increasingly dangerous opponents, wild beasts, trained warriors, and combat droids programmed with lethal routines. Each battle pushed his abilities further, teaching him to find strength in desperation. Yet, despite his victories, Maul began sensing that no amount of violence could fill the emptiness growing within him. Beyond combat, Sidious educated Maul in Sith philosophy and galactic politics. The apprentice learned of the ancient war between Jedi and Sith and came to understand his place in a 1,000-year plan for revenge. He endured constant pain and humiliation while being dispatched on missions to hunt pirates and criminals, feeding his rage without revealing the Sith's return too soon. Yet, something unexpected was growing inside Maul, an obsession that would soon consume him. Maul became fixated on the Jedi. Their calm serenity filled him with fury, which he mistook for arrogance and weakness. He believed that killing one of their peacekeepers would prove his worth to his master and fill the void within his soul. Because of his impatience, Sidious frequently warned him that the grand plan required secrecy, and Maul's bloodlust could expose them before the time was right. Unexpectedly, fate intervened through the underworld networks Maul had been cultivating. During an encounter with a pirate, he learned that a Jedi Padawan had been captured and would be auctioned to the highest bidder on a remote space station. Against his master's explicit orders, Maul traveled to Zev Zrex's facility orbiting a barren moon, determined to finally face a Jedi in combat. The auction featured Eldra Kaitis, a young Twi'lek Padawan whose transport had been shot down by raiders. Her presence among the galaxy's worst criminals filled Maul with anticipation. Unable to buy her directly, he hired bounty hunters Cad Bane, Aura Singh, and Vordelio to help stage an ambush. After she was sold, the group struck her new owner's ship, freeing Eldra and igniting chaos across the station. Just then, Zev activated her failsafe, triggering the station's self-destruct. The survivors crashed onto the nearby moon, where the auction guests hunted their prize through barren canyons. For survival, Maul and Eldra formed a reluctant alliance, fighting side by side despite their completely conflicting beliefs. This alliance would test everything Sidious had taught him about the nature of the Force. When they defeated the pursuers, Eldra challenged him to single combat, determined to prevent his rise before he could cause greater harm. The duel showcased their opposing philosophies. Eldra fought defensively, seeking to disarm and reason, while Maul attacked with relentless aggression, drawing upon his rage. She then tricked him by throwing her lightsaber at a rock behind him, causing rubble to bury him. Yet Maul's training and raw power proved decisive. As the Jedi turned to leave, her enemy emerged and struck her with his blade, marking his first Jedi kill. The moment of victory brought none of the satisfaction he expected. Maul found the victory strangely hollow, realizing that one Jedi's death did not quench his rage. When he returned to Coruscant, he was unsettled to find Sidious already knew of the slain Padawan. Maul braced for punishment, believing he had failed his master's trial. Instead, the Dark Lord was pleased by his strength, but made it clear that a single kill meant nothing. Only the eventual extinction of the Jedi Order would bring true fulfillment. This revelation would change everything about how Maul saw his purpose. For the apprentice, this was a major turning point, realizing that his hatred ran deeper than simple bloodlust, and Eldra's death taught him that external victories could never heal his inner void. In secret, he formed a criminal gang, adopting Eldra's name as an alias to hone his predatory skills. This Kaitis cartel enabled him to kill a Force-sensitive thief named Zek Pero, using him as practice for hunting actual Jedi. Not long after, Sidious took him to the ancient battlefield of Malachor, where a great battle between Jedi and Sith had once taken place. Sidious forced Maul to breathe in the ashes of fallen Sith warriors, slain when an ancient weapon had been activated in the Sith temple. Inhaling these ashes, Maul became overcome by visions, an alternate life as a Jedi protector, serving others rather than dominating them. Horrified by this vision, he slaughtered the family he was meant to protect, proving his rejection of the light was absolute. The experience confirmed his path completely. He was fully committed to the dark side. Upon witnessing the outcome of this final test at Malachor, Sidious realized that his apprentice was ready, devoted entirely to their cause with unwavering loyalty. Years of brutal conditioning had concluded, and Maul stood prepared for whatever came next. Even though his existence remained unknown to the Jedi, his master decided that they would learn the truth. The Sith had returned, and their opening strike would come through the blade of Darth Maul. Phantom Menace. After years hidden in the shadow, the Sith finally emerged from exile to strike at the heart of the Republic. Darth Sidious set his grand plan in motion, using the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo as the opening move in a campaign designed to destroy the Jedi Order and reshape the galaxy. For Darth Maul, this crisis was everything he had trained for, the chance to confront the Jedi openly and prove the dark side's supremacy. The blockade provided Sidious the political crisis he needed to advance his secret identity as Senator Palpatine toward the position of Supreme Chancellor. When the Jedi Council dispatched Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to negotiate with Viceroy Newt Gunray, Sidious ordered his apprentice on a public mission for the first time. Maul's orders were precise: locate Queen Amidala, and eliminate any Jedi who interfered with the invasion of Naboo. This would be Maul's first true test against the enemies he had obsessed over for years. Tracking the Queen's damaged ship, Maul deployed Sith probe droids across the settlements of Tatooine. The trail led him to the outskirts of Mos Espa, where the vessel had landed for emergency repairs. Vaulting onto his speeder, Bloodfin, he tore across the desert. Every second brought him closer to the confrontation he had envisioned for over a decade, and he felt his anticipation and rage fuse into a single burning focus. Soon after, the encounter came as Qui-Gon escorted young Anakin Skywalker back from the city. Without warning, Maul ignited his lightsaber, the crimson glow slicing through the Tatooine dusk. Qui-Gon met him in a desperate defensive battle, dodging and deflecting with skill honed over decades. Maul's aggression, honed through years of pain and hatred, pressed the Jedi relentlessly, forcing him across sand and rock with no room to breathe. Qui-Gon eventually reached the ship and escaped with Anakin, but the damage had already been done. For the first time in a millennium, the Sith had revealed themselves to the Jedi. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon reported to the Council that an ancient enemy had returned to threaten the Republic. But this confrontation was only the opening act in Sidious's elaborate plan. The political stage continued to shift as Queen Amidala traveled to Coruscant, where Palpatine convinced her to call for a vote of no confidence against Supreme Chancellor Valorum. Once the motion passed, Palpatine was elevated closer to the chancellorship. After that, Amidala returned to Naboo, ready to lead the liberation of her homeworld. Meanwhile, Maul positioned himself in the Theed Royal Palace, studying its corridors, stairways, and expansive hangar bays to use them as his strategy. When Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan infiltrated the palace to aid Amidala's assault, they found the Sith apprentice waiting for them. Finally, the moment Maul had anticipated for years had arrived. The duel of the fates began with Maul's double-bladed lightsaber moving with lethal precision, striking at both Jedi simultaneously. He drove them through the generator complex, splitting their focus and separating Qui-Gon to face him alone. Exploiting this moment, Maul struck. His blade pierced the Jedi Master's torso, delivering a wound that would forever alter the galaxy's future. Victory, however, came at a cost Maul had not foreseen. Driven by grief and rage, Obi-Wan retaliated. His emotions broke Jedi teachings, but granted him access to power Maul had never anticipated. During their duel, the apprentice disarmed Obi-Wan and prepared the finishing blow, fully confident in his victory. But the Padawan's resourcefulness, combined with his connection to the Force, allowed him to summon Qui-Gon's fallen lightsaber in a fluid motion. The blade struck true, bisecting Maul and sending his body tumbling into the reactor shaft. As Qui-Gon died in Obi-Wan's arms, he entrusted the boy Anakin Skywalker to the Padawan's care. Determined to honor his master's last wish, Obi-Wan vowed to train Anakin, even without the Council's approval if necessary. The Council, though wary of Anakin's age and attachments, ultimately granted their consent. On the other hand, Master Yoda reflected on the Sith's adherence to the Rule of Two, aware that another Sith Lord remained hidden in the shadows. Maul's apparent death marked a moment of triumph for Sidious. The Sith had returned and struck from the shadows. Yet the galaxy's belief in his demise was mistaken. The apprentice's fall began a transformation that would shape him into something far more dangerous than even Sidious had intended. In the darkness of the reactor shaft, Maul's hatred festered, unbroken and unyielding. Every injury, every moment of betrayal and loss fed a singular, all-consuming desire: revenge. That raw fury, honed over years of Sith training and sharpened by failure, would not remain buried. From the abyss, Maul would rise again, fundamentally changed, driven by the obsessions that would terrorize the galaxy and challenge even his master's carefully laid plans. Broken survivor. Death proved insufficient to contain Darth Maul's hatred. His bisected body plummeted down the reactor shaft and into the depths of Naboo's machinery, where chance carried him into a garbage chute and away from certain death. The broken remains of the Sith apprentice were eventually dumped on the junk world of Dathomir. Amid mountains of twisted scrap and toxic wastelands, Maul began a grim transformation fueled by rage and an unbreakable will to survive. Though his lower body was gone, the dark side kept him alive through sheer force of will. Maul clung to life in ways that should have been impossible. He pieced together crude cybernetic legs from discarded droid parts. Though every step was an agony, the jagged legs allowed him to move. Still, the suffering only deepened his connection to the dark side and fed the anger that sustained him through years of isolation. But survival came at a devastating cost to his mind. The solitude of Dathomir carried its own torment. Maul's memories twisted under the weight of trauma and endless isolation. He descended into madness, consumed by an obsession with Obi-Wan Kenobi that grew stronger each day. In a place filled with rusting metal, he ranted to no one, replaying the duel in endless cycles. Time lost all meaning as his thoughts fractured between rage and despair. Little remained of the disciplined apprentice Sidious once forged. While Maul suffered, the galaxy was reshaped by war. Even before the Clone Wars erupted, Mother Talzin had set a plan for revenge in motion against those who had wronged her. When Count Dooku sought a new apprentice after dismissing Asajj Ventress, she offered him Savage Opress, a Night Brother whom she transformed with dark magic into a formidable warrior. Her true plan was vengeance against Dooku, using Savage as the instrument of his downfall. Only later would she see Maul's return as a chance to challenge Sidious himself. Savage served Dooku briefly, but his true mission was revealed when he attempted to kill his master. After Savage betrayed Dooku and fled back to Dathomir, Talzin revealed that her firstborn son, Maul, had survived. She tasked Savage with finding his lost brother, setting in motion a quest that would unfold while tragedy struck their homeland. However, Talzin's gambit came at a devastating cost. Count Dooku, harboring resentment over the Night Sisters' betrayal and Savage's attempt on his life, commanded General Grievous to eradicate them entirely. The Separatist attack came during Ventress's return to rejoin her sisters, when she underwent the initiation ritual to become a full Night Sister once more. The battle was devastating. The Night Sisters mounted fierce resistance under Ventress's leadership, but Grievous deployed defoliator tanks to annihilate them in one overwhelming stroke. Mother Talzin called upon Old Daka, the Order's venerable elder, to raise an army of the dead through ancient dark magic. The burial pods cracked open as deceased Night Sisters rose to join their living sisters in battle. Talzin used a lock of Dooku's hair to create a voodoo figurine, tormenting him through dark sorcery, while Ventress dueled Grievous among the chaos. Despite her skill, the cyborg general proved too cunning. He tracked down the source of Talzin's magic and killed Old Daka first, disrupting the resurrection spell. Without reinforcements, the remaining Night Sisters were systematically slaughtered. Before Grievous could execute her, Talzin transformed into smoke and vanished, leaving only a spectral apparition to encourage Ventress before dissipating. The Night Sisters were extinct, their ancient power broken, their sacred homeland left in ruins. Talzin survived, but only as a weakened spirit, her physical form destroyed. Savage's search would ultimately lead to a reunion that reshaped the underworld. As Savage's quest stretched across forgotten corners of the galaxy, he traced leads through cantinas and criminal networks. Finally, the trail led him to Dathomir. In the toxic alleys of the junk world, Savage found the Sith reduced to a half-mad creature. Crude cybernetics twisted his body, while his mind had been shattered by years of torment and isolation. The reunion was as tragic as it was remarkable. Maul recognized Savage, but could scarcely separate memory from reality. His broken mind repeated the same words again and again. The Jedi. Rage and obsession had replaced reason, leaving him a shell of the warrior he once was. Immediately, Savage lifted his brother from the filth and carried him home to Dathomir, fulfilling their mother's command and beginning the process of restoration. On Dathomir, Talzin's magics began rebuilding what had been broken. She channeled the dark side to restore Maul's shattered form, replacing jagged limbs with sophisticated cybernetics. Moreover, her rituals pieced together the fragments of his mind. At last, his memories returned with clarity, and with them, his hatred became sharper than ever. What emerged from Talzin's rituals was far more dangerous than what had fallen into the reactor shaft. The Maul who had emerged was no longer the broken scavenger of Lotho Minor. His intelligence was intact, his cunning restored, and his desire for vengeance against Obi-Wan Kenobi reignited with terrifying focus. Though he accepted Savage as his apprentice, his true goal was not rebuilding the Sith's rule of two, but exacting personal revenge. Sidious's lessons about patience and the grand plan were discarded. Now, there was only one driving force: the burning need to make Obi-Wan pay. Shadow Collective. Reborn through Night Sister magics and driven by an unquenchable thirst for revenge, Darth Maul forged a new vision. No longer a hidden weapon for Sidious, he would carve his own path through the galaxy's criminal underworld. His path was ruthless and ambitious. Unite scattered sympathies under his leadership and use the Shadow Collective to strike at his enemies, building an empire worthy of a Sith Lord. But first, he had to settle an old score. Maul's first target was Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi who had cut him down on Naboo. Unable to locate him directly, Maul drew Kenobi out with calculated terror. He and Savage traveled to Raydonia, massacring civilians and burning settlements. Then, Maul recorded a holographic message taunting Kenobi with the slaughter, daring him to respond. To his delight, the trap worked. Kenobi arrived alone, driven by guilt over the deaths Maul had orchestrated in his name. Both brothers attacked simultaneously, overwhelming the Jedi and capturing him. Aboard their ship, Maul unleashed his fury, hurling Obi-Wan against the walls and striking him with savage blows. Yet Kenobi met his rage with calm defiance, even laughing at Maul's obsession, denying him the satisfaction of revenge. The encounter ended sooner than Maul had hoped. Asajj Ventress arrived seeking Savage, giving Kenobi the chance to escape. Maul had tasted victory, and he knew he could defeat Kenobi under the right circumstances, sparking plans for a larger, more calculated campaign to hunt his nemesis properly. Maul learned quickly, brute force alone would not suffice. Later on, he and Savage launched a terror campaign across the Outer Rim, targeting both civilians and Jedi to build a reputation and test their growing power. Savage accepted his role as apprentice after losing a brief challenge duel, formalizing the rule of two. Soon enough, their raids drew attention from the Republic and the criminal underworld, exactly as Maul intended. The brothers' clash on Florum reinforced the lesson. Savage killed Jedi Master Adi Gallia, but Kenobi escaped and severely wounded him. This led Maul to realize he needed strategy, cunning, and political leverage, not just violence. After a narrow escape from Florum, Maul and Savage were left adrift, nearly dead from oxygen deprivation. Salvation came from an unexpected source: Pre Vizsla and the Death Watch. The Mandalorian warriors sought to overthrow Duchess Satine, and in Maul they saw a powerful ally. A partnership was forged. Death Watch would lend military strength and political legitimacy, while Maul offered strategy and mastery of the dark side. Though their goals differed, they both needed allies. Therefore, with Death Watch at his side, Maul began assembling the Shadow Collective. Instead of ruling solely through fear, he offered crime lords unity and protection from both the Republic and the Separatists. By coordinating operations and sharing resources, the syndicates could form a third power in the galactic conflict. This was no ordinary criminal enterprise. It was a shadow empire capable of rivaling Sidious's subtle methods of control. Consolidating power required precision and calculated violence. When Black Sun initially refused his offer, Maul sent Savage to execute the entire council, leaving Zaidan Moj in charge of the compliant organization. The Pike Syndicate joined willingly after witnessing Black Sun's fate, recognizing the benefits of coordinated spice operations under Maul's protection. The ancient Hutt clans were next. On Nal Hutta, Maul confronted their council, where Jabba appeared by hologram. When the Hutts resisted, battle erupted and Aruba was slain. Afterwards, Maul traveled to Jabba's own palace and, faced with no alternative, the crime lord bent the Hutt clans to the Shadow Collective. Together, they destabilized Mandalore. Maul's Shadow Collective launched false flag attacks, allowing Death Watch to appear as protectors and turn public opinion against Satine's pacifist rule. Vizsla seized the moment, arresting Satine and claiming her failure demanded new leadership. But Vizsla then betrayed Maul, jailing him to secure power for himself. Maul soon escaped with the aid of Savage, and in the throne room, he challenged Vizsla to single combat. Maul killed him with the Darksaber, and though Bo-Katan and her followers resisted, much of Death Watch bent the knee, giving Maul control. With Mandalore under his command and the Shadow Collective spanning multiple sectors, Maul achieved unprecedented power, yet his ultimate revenge remained personal. Maul captured Duchess Satine, knowing her bond with Kenobi would draw the Jedi to him. Loyalists briefly freed her with the aid of Bo-Katan and her Night Owls, long enough for Satine to send a plea for help. She was soon recaptured, but her message reached the Jedi Council. Obi-Wan urged Yoda and Ki-Adi-Mundi to send aid, but they refused. Mandalore's neutrality bound the Republic's hands. Defying their decision, Obi-Wan went alone, disguising himself as a Mandalorian guard to infiltrate the city. He freed Satine from prison, and together they fled in a small transport. But their escape was cut short. Maul's forces fired missiles that struck the ship, forcing it down. Obi-Wan and Satine were captured once more, delivered into Maul's grasp. In the throne room of Mandalore, Maul held Satine aloft with the Force. He spoke of years of suffering, kept alive only by his hatred for Obi-Wan. Revenge had always been his plan, but he would not grant Kenobi a quick death. Instead, Maul vowed to make him share that suffering. Satine, he declared, was the perfect instrument of his vengeance, and with the Darksaber, he struck her down. Obi-Wan rushed forward, calling her name as he caught her. In her final moments, she confessed her love for him, words long left unspoken. She died in his arms, and Obi-Wan held her in silence, his grief plain but contained. Obi-Wan was then thrown into the prisons below, condemned by Maul to rot in his misery. With Satine dead and Kenobi imprisoned, Maul's grip over Mandalore grew stronger than ever. Son of Dathomir. Satine's death was felt across the galaxy through the Force. On Coruscant, Darth Sidious sensed his former apprentice's triumph and recognized the threat it represented. Maul's achievements, building a criminal empire, claiming Mandalore, and wielding the ancient Darksaber, violated the rule of two in the most dangerous way possible. His success had transformed him from a discarded weapon into a rival, demanding immediate attention. Sidious would not tolerate competition. He soon arrived on Mandalore not as a master reclaiming a wayward apprentice, but as a Sith Lord eliminating a rival. The confrontation unfolded in Mandalore's throne room, where Maul and Savage faced the full power of Sidious. The battle was swift and devastating, demonstrating the vast gulf between Sidious's mastery and the brothers' combined strength. A violent force push hurled Maul into the wall, leaving him stunned as his brother fought on alone. Savage met Sidious in a desperate clash, but the Dark Lord drove both lightsabers through his chest in a swift, merciless strike. With contemptuous ease, Sidious cast the dying warrior aside. Maul rushed to his brother's side, only to watch the last of his family slip away. Savage's death shattered him with grief. His brother, his apprentice, his only kin was gone. Overcome with rage, Maul hurled himself back into the fight, but even his fury could not bridge the gulf of Sidious's power. The duel ended with Maul broken, writhing under Sidious's lightning. Rather than ending Maul's life, Sidious imprisoned him on Stygian Prime, using him to draw out another enemy, Mother Talzin, who had long evaded his grasp. The trap was more elaborate than simple imprisonment. Soon, torture and interrogation followed on Stygian Prime. Count Dooku and Sidious both pressed Maul for intelligence about his Shadow Collective, but he revealed nothing. His Sith training, combined with stubborn willpower, honed through decades of pain, made him impossible to break. What appeared to be captivity was actually the opening move in Sidious's larger game. The trap unfolded when Death Watch loyalists Gar Saxon and Rook Kast launched their assault on the Fortress world. Their Mandalorian strike team appeared to act independently, but Sidious had allowed the intelligence to leak, orchestrating Maul's escape to serve his purposes. The Mandalorians freed Maul, unaware they were fulfilling the Dark Lord's design. For Maul, however, freedom meant opportunity. He retreated to Zanbar, where loyal Shadow Collective forces had maintained a hidden stronghold. There, He reassembled his scattered empire, reclaimed the Darksaber, and began planning his next move. When he contacted Mother Talzin through Night Sister magics, she warned him that Sidious was manipulating events, forcing them toward a final confrontation. Talzin instructed Maul to regroup on Ord Mantell, where the remnants of the Shadow Collective gathered for one desperate battle. Black Sun operatives, Pike Syndicate enforcers, and Night Brothers under Brother Viscus answered the call. Together, they fortified the industrial world and prepared for the inevitable Separatist assault. Meanwhile, General Grievous led the attack with massive droid armies, while Count Dooku accompanied him to ensure Maul's capture or death. The battle raged across Ord Mantell's factories and mining platforms. Maul realized that brute force alone would not win this fight. He employed the cunning that had built his criminal empire, orchestrating a bold strike at the heart of the enemy fleet. Boarding Grievous's flagship with a select team, he used the chaos of battle as cover for infiltration. The confrontation with General Grievous was short but decisive. Maul tackled the cyborg into the bridge's viewport glass and pressed the Darksaber to his throat, forcing him to cut the droid army's command signal. With the droids disabled and Grievous subdued, Maul's forces overwhelmed the Separatists, capturing both him and Count Dooku. Seizing the moment, Mother Talzin spoke to Dooku through her dark magic, revealing the truth of Sidious's plan, that he was only a temporary pawn, destined to be replaced by a younger apprentice, just as Maul had once been cast aside. For a moment, Dooku wavered, weighing the grim implications of her words. On Ord Mantell, the Jedi were investigating what the Separatist droids had been fighting and discovered Mandalorian involvement. Splitting up, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Tipley followed the trail of the Mandalorian outpost. From there, they were able to track Maul's forces to a hidden asteroid base where they launched a surprise attack with their cloned soldiers. As the fighting raged, General Grievous broke free of his prison and escaped aboard a shuttle. Maul then forced Count Dooku into a temporary alliance, handing him back his lightsaber. When Mace Windu and Aayla Secura arrived with reinforcements, the battle lines split. Windu and Secura confronted Maul directly, while Obi-Wan and Tipley engaged the Count. In the clash, Dooku cut Tipley down before Obi-Wan's eyes, leaving the Jedi Master reeling. With the Republic forces pressing hard, one of Maul's soldiers fired a rocket launcher into the hangar, forcing the Jedi to scatter and giving the Shadow Collective a chance to withdraw. Aboard their ship, Maul spoke with the leaders of Black Sun and the Pikes, who voiced doubts about his ability to keep their fragile alliance intact. When the discussion ended, Dooku turned to Maul and said coldly that seizing control was far easier than maintaining it, a cutting observation that echoed the Syndicate leader's concerns. Maul returned to Dathomir and called upon his mother. Answering his summons, Mother Talzin possessed Count Dooku and began siphoning his life force, the sacrifice required to restore her fully to the physical realm. In orbit, Sidious and General Grievous traced the Count's signal and approached the planet under cloak. At the same time, Separatist droids assaulted the Black Sun and the Pikes to prevent reinforcements. Their leaders demanded to know why Maul had gone silent as their positions collapsed. The temple wall exploded inward as Sidious and Grievous stormed in to recover Dooku. Maul declared that Mother Talzin lived and that the Count was under her full control. Still channeling her power through Dooku's body, Talzin fought at Maul's side against the intruders. Talzin wielded Dooku's body, but possessed none of his skill. Sidious unleashed a torrent of Force lightning, breaking her hold and forcing her to abandon the host. She then reformed in flesh, returning fully to the physical realm. Maul hurled Grievous out through the shattered wall, then lent his own strength to his mother, locking Sidious in a storm of emerald magic against searing blue lightning. But when Dooku regained consciousness, he joined his master, and their combined power overwhelmed Talzin's defense. With the tide turning, she urged Maul to flee, using the Force to push him through the breach where a Mandalorian ship waited. Dragged aboard by his warriors, Maul looked back in horror as Grievous forced his way through the storm and drove both lightsabers into Talzin. Her spirit burst free in wisps of green energy, leaving only a brittle husk of bone and cloth behind. Maul's anguished cry echoed across the chamber as the ship carried him away, her sacrifice ensuring his survival. As Talzin's remains lay broken on the temple floor, Sidious stood over her, declaring that there are those with power and those who only dream of it, and that her existence had been nothing but a dream. Dooku apologized for Maul's escape, but Sidious dismissed his concern. He assured the Count that everything had unfolded as he had foreseen. Maul's future had been erased, while their own path was now more certain than ever. Siege of Mandalore. When the Clone Wars entered their final phase, Maul recognized the galaxy stood on the brink of a transformation that would reshape everything. Though his criminal empire lay in ruins and his family was dead, he retained enough influence to seize one last prize before the war ended. Returning to Mandalore, he claimed the planet that had briefly served as his capital, preparing either to profit from the coming chaos or die fighting the forces that had destroyed his life. The loss of Mother Talzin and the destruction of Dathomir left Maul truly alone for the first time since his resurrection. The annihilation of the Night Sisters severed his final connection to family and the mystical power that had sustained him. Yet isolation sharpened his focus, transforming desperation into deadly purpose as he consolidated the remnants of his Shadow Collective on Mandalore. But Maul's return would not go unchallenged. Bo-Katan Kryze had never accepted his rule over her homeworld. The former Death Watch lieutenant now led the Mandalorian resistance with the tactical brilliance and relentless determination that had made her Pre Vizsla's most trusted warrior. Seeking Republic assistance, she allied with former Jedi Ahsoka Tano, lending legitimacy to her cause. Clone reinforcements under Commander Rex and the elite 332nd Company joined the fight, their helmets painted with an orange and white pattern in tribute of Ahsoka's return. For the first time since claiming the Darksaber, Maul faced an enemy with numbers, resources, and the moral authority he had always lacked. The siege unfolded across Sundari's gleaming towers and shadowed depths. Republic forces pressed upward through the lower levels, while Maul's super commandos defended the upper city. Bo-Katan's Night Owls engaged the Shadow Collective's flying warriors in aerial duels, while clone gunships weaved between towering spires, cannons blazing as battle raged across the domed city. In the shadows of the Undercity, Maul prepared his masterstroke. He had expected Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to lead the assault personally. His strategy had been built around confronting them, particularly Skywalker, whose death he believed might unravel Sidious's grand design. Facing Ahsoka instead, disappointment shadowed his features. The isolation that defined his existence had also clouded his foresight. While evading capture, Maul methodically dismantled his empire. He ordered Black Sun, the Pikes, and other criminal organizations into hiding, abandoning Mandalore's defenders to their fate. Crime lords who had once feared him now scrambled to evade Republic justice. Afterward, Maul captured ARC Trooper Jesse and violently probed his mind for intelligence on Ahsoka, seeking any advantage. Prime Minister Almec was killed during the fighting before he could reveal too much, though not before confirming Skywalker's central role in Maul's dark visions. The final confrontation would be fought in the heart of Mandalorian power. In Sundari's throne room, where Mandalore's history weighed heavily on the walls, Maul released Jesse and dismissed Bo-Katan to the battlefield, acknowledging her leadership even as he denied her victory. He confronted Ahsoka with the truth he had pieced together. Sidious had groomed Anakin as his next apprentice. Maul's desperate plan was to kill Skywalker himself, believing it would prevent the Sith Lord's scheme. When Ahsoka refused to believe him, violence erupted. Their duel spanned shattered halls and the great support beams holding Sundari's dome. Maul pressed his advantage, driving Ahsoka toward the edges, using the narrow beams to restrict her movements. Yet she adapted with agility and cunning that reminded him of her former master. At last, she disarmed him, hurled him from the beams, and bound him with the Force until clone gunships arrived. Mandalorian whipcords completed his capture. Maul's imprisonment would become the least of his concerns. Confined in a specialized Mandalorian cell aboard the Venator-class Star Destroyer Tribunal, his composure finally cracked under the weight of his visions. The ancient device was designed to hold Force wielders, a relic from Mandalore's warrior past. He thrashed against his bonds, screaming warnings of fire and death, dismissed as the ravings of a broken Sith. For Ahsoka, this should have been a triumph. Instead, it marked only the beginning of a greater catastrophe. While the Republic cruiser transported Maul to Coruscant, Order 66 ignited across the galaxy. The clones turned on their Jedi commanders with mechanical precision. Rex fought the command for only a moment, straining against the chip long enough to mention a clue. Find fives. Then the order consumed him, and he opened fire. Ahsoka deflected the barrage and escaped into the corridors. Knowing she was outnumbered, she freed Maul to create a diversion, unleashing him against the pursuing troopers. Maul rampaged unchecked through the cruiser, tearing apart the hyperdrive with the Force and sending the massive vessel spiraling toward the moon below. Before the Tribunal crashed into the moon's surface, Maul commandeered a shuttle and escaped the doomed vessel. The Republic cruiser became a graveyard of twisted metal, while Ahsoka and Rex found their own way to safety and vanished into hiding. As Order 66 unfolded, Maul felt a grim satisfaction. The betrayal he witnessed validated his warnings. The Republic's soldiers turned on the Jedi exactly as he had foreseen. His former master's plan was unfolding, proving both his insight and the galaxy's doom. The Clone Wars ended exactly as Maul had foreseen. Maul disappeared into the underworld, while Sidious rose as Emperor. The Jedi were purged, and the Republic was extinguished in a transformation decades in the making. For Maul, the Empire's rise was both proof of his foresight and the measure of his failure. He had seen Sidious's truth, yet lacked the power to prevent it. Once the instrument of Sith dominance, he was now its greatest victim, condemned to watch from the shadows as his master achieved ultimate victory. Survival brought no satisfaction, only exile. Now left without allies, family, or purpose, Maul returned to the obsession that had haunted him for decades: the final hunt for Obi-Wan Kenobi. The fallen Sith Lord would spend years preparing for one last confrontation, driven by hatred that time could never heal. Crimson Dawn to Twin Suns. After the fall of the Republic, the rise of the Galactic Empire changed the galaxy. Maul found new ways to survive. No longer claiming the Darth title after Sidious betrayed him, he abandoned the Sith identity and built his own path in the criminal underworld. As Emperor Palpatine tightened his grip and crushed opposition, the shadows became one of the few places Maul could operate freely. From what remained of the Shadow Collective, Maul built a new syndicate, Crimson Dawn. The group was secretive, organized in separate layers, and relied on alliances with other underworld organizations. Dryden Voss acted as its public face, while Maul controlled the network from his hidden base on Dathomir. His influence reached across many star systems, yet even power could not satisfy his true obsession. Years passed, but Maul's attention drifted from running Crimson Dawn back to his old enemy, Obi-Wan Kenobi. A major event shook Crimson Dawn when Han Solo and Tobias Beckett's crew delivered refined coaxium to Voss in a deal that went wrong. Kira killed Voss, then reported to Maul, pledging her loyalty. She took control of Crimson Dawn under Maul's distant guidance, while the Syndicate continued without his constant oversight. Still, Maul's mind stayed fixed on Kenobi. His obsession grew stronger, and he neglected his criminal empire to track the Jedi. Rumors and fragmented visions led him to Malachor, a ruined Sith world where a superweapon lay frozen in ash. Years alone tested him, but survival fueled his pain. On Malachor, Maul survived through the dark side and sheer determination. Solitude weighed on him as he wandered the crumbling temple. His chance came when Ezra Bridger and his rebel friends entered the ruins. Maul pretended to be a weak, harmless hermit and gained the trust of his visitors. He temporarily teamed up with Ezra, Ahsoka Tano, and Kanan Jarrus to fight a shared threat. Together, they defeated 3 Imperial Inquisitors, the 5th brother, 7th sister, and 8th brother, in fierce lightsaber battles across the collapsing temple. But Maul's true nature revealed itself. He struck down Kanan, blinding the Jedi Master, and escaped the collapsing temple aboard a stolen ship. Though he had failed to claim the temple's ultimate weapon, he did not leave defeated. Ezra carried with him the Sith holocron, a dark prize that Maul became obsessed with reclaiming. In the weeks that followed, Maul hunted relentlessly until he found the boy once more. To draw Ezra out, he ambushed the Ghost and seized its crew. turning them into leverage for the holocrons he desired. Through the Force, he reached into Hera's mind and uncovered the hidden location of the Jedi holocron. Ultimately, Maul forced Ezra to combine the Sith and Jedi holocrons in a dangerous ceremony. The convergence of Sith and Jedi holocrons tore open a searing vergence in the Force, flooding them with visions beyond mortal comprehension. Ezra sought a path to end the Sith, while Maul searched for the thread of his own vengeance. From the chaos came revelation, the truth that Obi-Wan Kenobi still lived. Maul lured Ezra to Dathomir and persuaded him to take part in an ancient Night Sister ritual within the ruins of the Old Witch stronghold. Using the power of Dathomir's dark waters and remnants of Night Sister magic, Maul sought to bind their minds together and fully share the fragmented knowledge from the Jedi and Sith holocrons. The ritual unveiled visions pointing toward Obi-Wan Kenobi's existence, but it also carried a terrible price. The ritual awakened vengeful Night Sister spirits, who rose and possessed Kanan and Sabine when they tried to intervene. Satisfied with the revelation and unwilling to risk himself further, Maul departed Dathomir immediately, leaving Ezra behind to face the consequences alone. The final hunt led him to Tatooine. Maul tracked his enemy to the desert planet where their rivalry began. Unable to find Kenobi directly, he used one last trick. He sent false visions to Ezra, luring the boy into the desert as bait to draw Kenobi out. Just as he expected, his plan worked. When Ezra got lost, Obi-Wan came to rescue him, revealing himself to Maul. Under the twin suns, the old enemies faced each other one last time. Maul immediately sensed that Kenobi was protecting something important, more than just himself. In the quiet desert, they ignited their lightsabers. Obi-Wan used the defensive stance of Qui-Gon Jinn, a move both familiar and strategic. Maul recognized it, but misjudged its meaning. Acting on muscle memory and rage, he attacked with the same strike that killed Qui-Gon decades ago. But Obi-Wan had prepared. He had studied the attack, learned from past mistakes, and reacted with precision. In one smooth motion, he cut Maul's lightsaber and delivered a fatal strike. At last, Maul found a form of peace. As he fell into Obi-Wan's arms, the hatred that had driven him for so long began to fade. Through the haze of approaching death, he finally understood the truth. Obi-Wan had never been his real enemy. The Jedi had simply been defending himself on Naboo. Instead, the true architect of his suffering had been Sidious all along, the master who stole him from his mother's arms as a child, robbed him of his childhood, and forged him into a weapon of pure hatred. What hurt most was that the Sith Lord discarded him at the moment he was no longer useful. Alongside this, he heard about the boy Obi-Wan protected, Luke Skywalker, the Chosen One. Maul understood that Luke would succeed where he had failed, defeating Sidious and fulfilling the prophecy. With his last breath, Maul spoke of the justice that would come through the boy. But Maul was not the only Sith who had endured so many hardships, because Krea's story was even more traumatic. So watch it next, here